One person walks away without saying much. The other person is left searching for answers. Weeks pass, months pass. There is no message, no explanation, no clear sign that they still care. From the outside, it looks simple. It looks like they moved on without looking back. That is the story most people believe. But human psychology is rarely that simple. Beneath silence, there can be conflict. Beneath distance, there can be emotions that never found healthy words. Beneath emotional walls, there can be thoughts that never stop repeating. Many people assume that when someone with an avoidant attachment style pulls away, every feeling disappears with them. They believe distance always means indifference. They believe silence always means rejection. Yet psychologists who study attachment patterns describe something much more complicated. An avoidant person may struggle with emotional closeness, not because they never feel deeply, but because deep connection can activate fears they never learned to manage. Those fears often stay hidden, even from the avoidant themselves. This is where the story becomes far more interesting. Some relationships leave a mark that refuses to fade, not because they were perfect, not because they were easy, but because they touched emotional places that had been locked away for years. When an avoidant meets someone who offers unusual levels of empathy, patience, and emotional understanding, something unexpected can happen. The connection may become difficult to forget, even if the avoidant chooses distance instead of closeness. The mind keeps returning to conversations, memories, and moments that were never fully processed. The outside world sees silence. The inner world may look completely different. That does not always mean love. It does not always mean they want the relationship back. It certainly does not mean every avoidant experiences the same thing. People are different, and attachment styles exist on a spectrum. Still, many people are surprised to learn that emotional withdrawal does not automatically erase emotional impact. Sometimes it does the opposite. The feelings become trapped inside because they were never expressed in a healthy way. There is another part of this story that almost nobody talks about. The strongest emotional reactions are not always visible. Some people cry openly. Others keep everything locked behind a calm face. Avoidant individuals often become experts at appearing unaffected. Friends may believe they are completely fine. Family members may assume they have already moved on. Even the person they left behind may think they were never important. Yet hidden emotional conflict can continue long after everyone else believes the chapter has ended. That hidden conflict is exactly what this video explores. Today, you will learn why certain people leave a deeper emotional imprint on an avoidant than others. You will discover why emotional distance and emotional obsession are not always opposites. You will understand why silence can sometimes hide confusion instead of certainty. You will also learn the psychological difference between missing someone, thinking about someone, and being capable of building a healthy relationship with someone. Those are three very different experiences, yet many people mistakenly treat them as the same. This video will also uncover several lesser-known psychological patterns that rarely appear in popular discussions. You will learn why avoidants often become more aware of a relationship only after emotional distance grows. You will discover why a person who offered genuine acceptance can become difficult to replace. You will also see why trying harder, chasing more, or sacrificing your own emotional well-being rarely creates the outcome people hope for. Some of the most surprising truths about avoidant psychology are also the least understood. As this discussion unfolds, one important fact should stay in mind. Understanding someone's emotional patterns is not the same as excusing unhealthy behavior. Learning why someone acts a certain way does not mean accepting disrespect, emotional neglect, or inconsistency. Knowledge creates clarity, not obligation. The goal is not to encourage anyone to wait for another person to change. The goal is to understand the hidden emotional processes that shape human relationships so you can make wiser decisions for your own life. By the end of this video, you will see avoidant behavior through a completely different lens. Some common myths will disappear. Some surprising realities will become much clearer. Most importantly, you will understand why the deepest emotional battles often happen in complete silence, where nobody else can see them. Stay with us until the very end, because the final lesson brings everything together. It explains the biggest misunderstanding people make when they believe an avoidant silence tells the whole story. That single insight changes the way many people interpret emotional distance forever. Welcome to the channel, where we explore the hidden psychology behind relationships, attachment, and emotional behavior in a thoughtful and balanced way. If you enjoy learning about the deeper reasons people think, feel, and act the way they do, then this is the perfect place for you. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join our growing community. Now, let us uncover the hidden psychology behind why some avoidants struggle to forget the one person who reached parts of them that almost nobody else ever could. The first thing to understand is that not every kind person is a super empath. Many people are caring, many people listen, many people offer support during difficult moments. A super empath goes one step further. They pay close attention to emotions that other people often miss. They notice changes in tone, body language, and energy. They sense when someone is hurting, even when that person insists that everything is fine. Their ability to understand others often comes naturally, and they are willing to offer patience without demanding immediate emotional openness. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, this kind of emotional presence can feel unfamiliar. Many avoidants grow up learning that vulnerability is risky. They become skilled at hiding emotions because it once helped them protect themselves. Over time, emotional independence becomes part of their identity. Depending on another person starts to feel uncomfortable, even when that person is trustworthy. This is why genuine emotional safety can feel confusing instead of comforting. The mind wants connection, but old protective patterns quickly raise emotional walls. This creates a difference between ordinary attraction and deep emotional impact. Attraction is often based on appearance, chemistry, or shared interests. Emotional impact reaches much deeper. It happens when someone makes another person feel truly seen. A super empath often notices strengths that others overlook and quietly accepts imperfections without constant criticism. That level of understanding can leave a lasting impression because it touches emotional needs that have remained hidden for years. The avoidant may not even realize what is happening at first. They simply notice that conversations feel different. They feel calmer around this person. They begin sharing small pieces of themselves that they normally keep private. For a brief moment, lowering their guard feels possible. Then another emotion appears. Fear begins to replace comfort. The connection starts to feel more serious than expected. Instead of moving closer, the avoidant may suddenly create distance, not because the connection lacks meaning, but because being understood so deeply can feel overwhelming before they are emotionally prepared to handle it. Most people meet an avoidant without realizing how much effort goes into appearing calm, independent, and emotionally unaffected. Over the years, many avoidants learn to protect themselves by carefully controlling what others are allowed to see. They may smile during difficult conversations. They may change the subject when emotions become too personal. They may even convince themselves that they do not need anyone. To people around them, they often appear confident, private, and completely in control. That outer image becomes a mask that helps them avoid situations that feel emotionally overwhelming. The super empath often notices something different. Instead of focusing only on words, they pay attention to what is left unsaid. They notice hesitation before an answer. They recognize the sadness behind a forced smile. They sense tension in moments that seem ordinary to everyone else. This is not because they can read minds. It is because they naturally observe emotional patterns that many people overlook. Rather than judging the avoidant for pulling away, they become curious about the emotions hidden beneath the surface. For the avoidant, this experience can feel completely unfamiliar. Most people accept the mask without asking questions. The super empath gently sees beyond it. That kind of understanding can bring an unexpected sense of relief. For perhaps the first time in a long time, the avoidant feels that someone recognizes the parts of them they have spent years trying to hide. Being accepted without needing to pretend can feel deeply comforting. At the very same time, that comfort awakens fear. If another person can see behind the mask, then the emotional defenses that once felt safe suddenly seem fragile. Old beliefs begin to surface. They may worry that becoming emotionally known will eventually lead to disappointment, rejection, or loss of independence. The closer the connection grows, the stronger this inner conflict becomes. Part of them wants to stay where they finally feel understood, while another part quietly searches for the nearest emotional exit before the relationship becomes even more meaningful. One of the biggest misunderstandings about avoidant behavior is the belief that distance always means the feelings disappeared. On the surface, it certainly looks that way. An avoidant may stop calling, reply less often, or suddenly seem emotionally unavailable after moments of genuine closeness. To the other person, the change feels confusing. Everything seemed to be moving in the right direction, and then the connection became quieter without warning. It is easy to assume that they simply stopped caring. Yet, attachment psychology suggests that, for some avoidants, emotional withdrawal can happen because closeness becomes emotionally overwhelming, not necessarily because the connection meant nothing. As the relationship becomes more meaningful, the avoidant may begin to experience conflicting emotions at the same time. One part of them enjoys feeling accepted, understood, and emotionally safe. Another part starts worrying that they are becoming too dependent on someone else. This inner tension can activate old protective habits. Creating distance feels like a way to reduce emotional pressure. Instead of talking openly about their fears, they often retreat into silence, because silence feels more manageable than vulnerability. Something unexpected can happen during that period of withdrawal. Physical distance does not always create emotional distance. In some cases, it creates more time to think. Without daily conversations or shared experiences, the mind begins replaying memories that once seemed ordinary. Small moments become surprisingly meaningful. A simple conversation, a kind gesture, or a feeling of emotional comfort may return again and again. The relationship continues inside their thoughts, even while they appear completely detached on the outside. This is one of the greatest paradoxes of avoidant attachment. The desire for connection does not always disappear when fear appears. Instead, both emotions can exist together. They may miss the closeness while also feeling anxious about returning to it. They may want reassurance while resisting the very conversations that could provide it. From the outside, their behavior appears contradictory. Inside, they are often caught between two powerful forces. One quietly pulls them toward emotional connection, while the other pushes them to protect themselves before the relationship begins to feel too important to lose. As the emotional connection grows stronger, another hidden process often begins inside the avoidant. It is not always the relationship itself that creates fear. It is what the relationship represents. Many avoidants value independence because at some point in their lives, relying on other people may not have felt safe or predictable. Over the years, they learn to solve problems alone, manage emotions alone, and protect themselves by expecting very little from others. This self-reliance becomes more than a habit. It becomes part of their identity. When someone enters their life and starts becoming emotionally important, that identity can suddenly feel threatened. One fear is losing independence. The avoidant may begin asking silent questions they never share with anyone else. Will this relationship change who I am? Will I lose my freedom? Will I become responsible for someone else's emotions? Even when the other person places no such demands on them, these worries can still appear because they come from old emotional patterns rather than present reality. Another fear is emotional exposure. The deeper the connection becomes, the more there is to lose. Opening up means allowing another person to see insecurities, disappointments, and painful memories that have stayed hidden for years. That level of vulnerability can feel exciting one moment and overwhelming the next. Pulling away seems like the safest option because distance creates the illusion of emotional control. There is also the fear of depending on someone. Many avoidants associate dependence with weakness, even though healthy relationships naturally involve mutual support. As they notice themselves caring more deeply, they may become uncomfortable with their own emotions. Instead of moving closer, they create space, hoping the feelings will become less intense. Ironically, stepping back does not always silence those emotions. The human mind tends to return to experiences that feel unfinished, conversations that ended too soon, emotions that were never expressed, and connections that were interrupted often continue playing in the background. The relationship may no longer exist in daily life, but it continues to occupy mental space. While they appear distant on the outside, their thoughts can repeatedly circle back to the person they tried so hard to leave behind, searching for answers they never allowed themselves to speak aloud. Time moves forward, and life brings new people into the avoidance world. On the surface, everything appears normal. They meet someone new, start fresh conversations, and give another relationship a chance. Friends may assume they have completely moved on because they seem calm and emotionally controlled. Yet emotional experiences are not measured only by time. Some connections quietly change the way a person experiences every relationship that follows. When someone has been deeply understood by a superempath, ordinary interactions can begin to feel different. This does not mean every future relationship will fail, and it certainly does not mean the avoidant cannot build a healthy bond with someone else. It simply means that an unusually authentic connection can become a personal reference point. The emotional honesty, patience, and acceptance they once experienced may now shape how they unconsciously evaluate future relationships. Many new connections feel pleasant at first, but they may not create the same emotional depth. Conversations stay on the surface, vulnerability feels limited. The avoidant may notice that they are smiling, talking, and spending time together, yet something feels quietly absent. They cannot always explain it because the missing piece is not excitement. It is the feeling of being genuinely understood without needing to perform or hide. Authenticity is difficult to replace because it cannot be forced. It develops through trust, consistency, and emotional safety over time. A super empath often creates that environment naturally. Instead of trying to change the avoidant, they patiently accept them while encouraging honest communication. That experience can leave a lasting emotional impression because it feels rare. The avoidant may never admit these comparisons out loud. In many cases, they may not even recognize that they are making them. The process happens quietly inside their own thoughts. A familiar laugh reminds them of someone from the past. A meaningful conversation brings back old memories. Small moments begin connecting themselves without intention. The emotional standard has shifted, and every new connection is measured against an experience that once reached them in a way few others ever did, even if they never find the words to explain why. In many relationships, patterns slowly develop without either person realizing it. One person reaches out first, the other takes more time to respond. One starts difficult conversations, the other avoids them. Over time, these roles can become predictable. In some relationships involving an avoidant, they may grow accustomed to the other person making repeated efforts to reconnect after moments of distance. That pattern does not happen in every relationship, but when it does, it can quietly shape expectations on both sides. A super empath often begins by showing extraordinary patience. They try to understand instead of judge. They give space when space is needed. They offer reassurance instead of criticism. For a while, they may continue reaching out because they believe the relationship is worth protecting. Then something changes. They begin to realize that compassion should not require abandoning their own emotional well-being. Instead of constantly chasing answers, they start protecting their own peace. This shift can be surprising. The avoidant may expect another message, another attempt to reconnect, or another opportunity to keep the relationship in its familiar pattern. When those expectations are no longer met, the emotional balance changes. The silence no longer feels completely under their control. For some avoidants, this unexpected change creates curiosity. They begin wondering why the dynamic feels different. They notice the absence of someone who was once consistently present. That curiosity should not be confused with certainty or guaranteed regret. People respond differently, and not every avoidant reacts in the same way. Some continue moving forward without looking back. Others begin reflecting on the relationship more deeply than they did while it was still available. The important point is that emotional distance can sometimes create space for self-reflection, especially when familiar patterns are interrupted. As the super empath invests more energy into their own healing instead of trying to rescue the relationship, they often become calmer, more confident, and emotionally balanced. Ironically, this quiet change can draw more attention than constant pursuit ever did. The avoidant may start noticing not only the person's absence, but also the emotional stability they once brought into the relationship, leading them to examine feelings they had previously pushed aside instead of fully understanding them. This is one of the most important distinctions people often miss. Many videos treat obsession and love as if they are the same thing. They are not. A person can think about someone every single day and still struggle to build a healthy relationship with them. At the same time, someone can genuinely love another person while consistently showing that love through trust, communication, and emotional presence. The difference is not found in the intensity of the feelings, it is found in how those feelings are expressed. Obsession often grows from unresolved emotions. The human mind naturally returns to experiences that feel incomplete. Questions without answers, conversations that ended too soon, and emotions that were never fully expressed can stay active for a long time. The more someone tries to suppress those thoughts, the more persistent they can become. This is why repeatedly thinking about a person does not automatically mean the relationship was healthy or that both people were emotionally prepared for lasting intimacy. Love asks for something different. Love requires emotional availability. It requires the ability to stay present when conversations become uncomfortable. It requires honesty, consistency, and a willingness to work through conflict instead of escaping from it. These qualities cannot be replaced by intense emotions alone. Someone may deeply care about another person, but if fear constantly prevents vulnerability, that care may never develop into the kind of relationship both people need. For some avoidants, this creates an exhausting internal struggle. Their emotions may become stronger as the relationship grows, yet those same emotions activate fears that encourage distance instead of closeness. They may think about the person often, replay meaningful memories, or wonder how life might have been different. Still, reflection by itself does not create change. Without emotional growth and a willingness to face uncomfortable feelings, the relationship remains trapped between longing and avoidance. This is why understanding attachment psychology is so important. It reminds us that powerful emotions and healthy love are not always the same experience. One can exist without the other, and recognizing that difference helps explain why some relationships leave a lasting emotional impact, even when both people were never able to fully meet each other's emotional needs. One of the hardest lessons a super empath often learns is that love and understanding are powerful, but they are not unlimited solutions. Because they naturally see the good in people, they may believe that enough patience, enough compassion, and enough reassurance will eventually help the avoidant feel safe. They notice the fear beneath the distance. They recognize the pain hidden behind emotional walls. Instead of walking away, they stay longer, hoping that consistent love will slowly break through years of self-protection. That hope usually comes from a kind heart, but it can also become a heavy burden. The super empath may begin taking responsibility for problems they did not create. They start believing that if they just say the right words, show enough understanding, or wait a little longer, everything will change. They confuse supporting someone with carrying someone. Without realizing it, they slowly place the other person's healing above their own emotional needs. The truth is that emotional healing cannot be completed by another person. A caring relationship can provide encouragement, safety, and support, but it cannot force someone to face fears they are not ready to confront. An avoidant has to make the personal decision to become more emotionally aware, communicate honestly, and challenge old protective patterns. No amount of unconditional patience can replace that inner work. This is why healthy boundaries are not a sign of giving up. They are a sign of emotional maturity. A boundary is not punishment. It is a clear statement that both people's emotional well-being matters. It allows compassion to exist without self-sacrifice. It allows love to exist without accepting repeated emotional harm. When the super empath begins protecting their own peace, they stop measuring their worth by how much they can rescue someone else. Ironically, this is often the moment they begin changing the relationship with themselves. Their energy shifts away from fixing another person's emotional wounds and toward building their own confidence, self-respect, and emotional stability. Instead of waiting for another person to become ready, they begin creating a life that no longer depends on someone else's ability to heal, and that quiet transformation changes far more than they once believed possible. After everything we have explored, one important question remains. Can an avoidant actually change? The simple answer is yes, but the complete answer is much more meaningful. Change is possible, yet it does not happen because another person waits long enough, loves hard enough, or refuses to give up. Real change begins when the avoidant becomes aware of the patterns shaping their relationships. Without that awareness, the same cycle of closeness, fear, withdrawal, and regret often repeats itself with different people. Self-awareness is the first turning point. It is the moment someone stops blaming every failed relationship on bad timing or incompatible partners and begins asking deeper questions. Why do I pull away when someone gets close? Why does emotional safety sometimes make me uncomfortable? Why do I struggle to express what I truly feel? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they open the door to growth. A person cannot change a pattern they refuse to recognize. Healing attachment patterns also takes time. These behaviors are usually not created overnight, so they rarely disappear overnight. Learning to trust, communicate honestly, and remain emotionally present requires patience and consistent practice. There may be setbacks along the way. There may be moments when old fears return. The important difference is that a person who is committed to healing notices those moments and chooses to respond differently instead of automatically falling back into familiar habits. This is why consistent effort matters far more than beautiful promises. Words can sound convincing during emotional conversations, but lasting change is reflected in everyday actions. It appears in honest communication, accountability, emotional consistency, and the willingness to remain present even when vulnerability feels uncomfortable. Those small choices, repeated over time, build trust far more effectively than dramatic declarations ever can. A healthy relationship is possible when both people are willing to grow. The avoidant must be willing to face fears instead of running from them. The other person must also protect their own emotional well-being instead of losing themselves in the process. Growth works best when it is shared, not carried by only one partner. Some avoidants do heal and build deeply connected relationships. Others may never choose that path. No one can predict another person's journey. The encouraging truth is that genuine transformation is always possible for those who are willing to face themselves with honesty, patience, and consistent effort, regardless of when that journey begins. As we reach the end of this discussion, one truth becomes clear. The avoidant's intense focus on someone they once cared about is not always about control, pride, or a desire to play games. In some cases, it reflects a quiet battle between two powerful emotions. One part longs for closeness, while another part fears everything that true closeness requires. That conflict can create confusion, distance, and regret. Yet it is important to remember that every person is different. Not every avoidant experiences the same emotions, and not every relationship follows the same path. Perhaps the greatest lesson is not about understanding the avoidant, it is about understanding yourself. Learning the psychology behind someone's behavior can bring clarity, but clarity should never come at the cost of your own emotional health. It is easy to become so focused on explaining another person's actions that you forget to ask a much more important question. Is this relationship also bringing peace, trust, and emotional safety into your own life?